It's time to put your newfound knowledge to the test. The challenge is to see if you can work out how to display an image of the month in the homepage of the Hansel and Petal website. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see there's a photo of tulips and it's labelled Seasonal Specials. This is what I want to make into the photo of the month. I'd like you to adapt the code in index.php so that a different photo is displayed each month. Now let's have a look at the HTML in index.php to see what's involved. The code for the image is on line 83, and you can see that it's got a very long name. Obviously, we're going to have to change that if we're going to have a different image each month. It's also got alternate text, and the height and the width are declared there. Now let's have a look at the images folder, and you can see that at the bottom here are 11 images that all begin with special underscore and then 3 letters, the beginning of a month. And the one that's missing is for April. So you'll have to find that image of the tulips and rename it special underscore APR.jpg. All the season-related images are the same width and height, so it's just the file name that needs to change. Don't worry for the moment about the alternate text. We'll deal with that in the next chapter. Now, to solve this challenge, you'll need to use the date function. And I recommend that you go to the PHP online documentation, have a look at the date function, have a look at all the format characters. There may be a format character there that's different from one that we've used so far that gives you the right answer. The other thing that I suggest that you do is have a look at the PHP documentation for strings. In an earlier video, we used string to upper to convert something to uppercase. Maybe you can find there's a function to convert to lowercase. One final thing that you need to think about: where's the best place to put the code, particularly if you can't change the server's time zone in a configuration file? I estimate it'll take about 10 to 15 minutes to sort this out, and in the next video I'll show you how I did it. Here's my solution to the challenge of displaying an image of the month. The first thing to do is to get the name of the existing image of tulips from the HTML at the bottom of index.php and then change it. There's the image. It's on line 83. Its name begins with 450_2_tulip. That should be sufficient to find it. So let's go to the images folder, and there it is, 450_2. Yep, that's it. So we need to change that name to special underscore APR.jpg. And if we now look at our files, our images, we've got 12 images, all of which begin with special underscore followed by the first 3 letters of the month name. So we can now go back to our editing program, and we need to change the image name here. I'm going to select that, delete it, and insert special underscore, because that's the way that each name begins. And then we have a PHP code block, and we're going to echo the month name. We don't yet have a variable for that, but we'll call it month name. And then the closing PHP tag. It's very important to make sure that there is no space between the underscore and the opening PHP tag and between the closing PHP tag and the period before JPG. If you've got any spaces there, of course, the file name will be broken. So what we need to do is to get the month name. We need to get the first 3 letters of the month name. I suggested that you use the date function. So let's go to the PHP documentation to see if there's a suitable format to get the first 3 letters of a month name. Here's the documentation, and if we look at the format characters for month, uppercase M, a short textual representation of a month, 3 letters. The only problem is that it begins with a capital letter. We'll deal with that a little bit later. We need to go back to our code and to decide where we're going to insert the code to generate this month name variable. Now I'm going to scroll right up to the top of the page. Normally where I put all of my processing code that's not going to output anything is above the doc type, and that's where I'm going to put it this time. The only caveat is, if you're in the situation where your server hasn't set the time zone and you've needed to set the time zone in pagetop.php, you'll need to put the processing code after you've included pagetop PHP. Remember, that's because the date function requires the time zone to be set before you can use it. So if you've needed to use the function date default time zone set in pagetop.php, so let's just put a little comment in there to indicate where the code would need to go. So there's a little indication of where you would need to put the code if you are setting the time zone in pagetop.php. If you're not setting it in pagetop.php, if it's already set in your configuration, you can put the code above the doc type like I'm going to do. So let's just add a PHP block up there. And our variable was, dear oh dear, we've got a little error there. That's the value of having syntax checking on the fly. I'd made my PHP tag the wrong way round. So the variable that we were using was month name. So month name equals date. And then it was a capital M, needs to be a string, so in quotes. And that will give us the first three letters of the month. Now what we need to do is we need to convert that to lowercase. Earlier we used string to upper. There's actually another one which is called string to lower, which converts everything to lowercase. So month name equals str2lower, and then the argument will be month name. So what's happening here is that we're first getting the first three letters of the month, but the first letter is uppercase, so we then use string to lower to convert it all to lowercase. So if we save that, and then we go to our browser and to the Hansel and Petal homepage, there was the original image. It's tulips, which is April. I'm not recording in April, so let's see what happens when I refresh the page. Some nice new flowers. Not quite sure what they are, but it's certainly a different flower for the month. So that's the solution that I came up with. First, I got hold of the month name, the first three letters of the month name, using the date function, and then I converted it to lowercase using string to lower. Problem solved. It might seem odd to pose a philosophical question about the nature of truth in a video about PHP. After all, there's no ambiguity about the comparisons we've used in if-else conditions so far. One value is either equal to another or greater than it, or it isn't. What's true and false is clear-cut. But in common with other programming languages, PHP supports the concept of values that are implicitly true or false. Sometimes these are called truthy and falsy values. JavaScript shares the same concept, but PHP's definition of true and false is slightly different. Let's start with what PHP regards as false. The keywords false and null. These are keywords, so they should never be wrapped in quotes. If you use quotes, they're regarded as ordinary strings. Both false and null are case insensitive. 0, either as a number or as a string. In other words, the number 0 between quotes, but not spelled out as a word. An empty string. That's a pair of quotes with nothing between them, not even a space. If you include a space between the quotes, it's no longer regarded as empty. An array with 0 elements. This is an important difference from JavaScript, which always treats an array as true. We'll be covering arrays in detail in the next chapter. PHP also regards a simple XML object created from empty tags as being false. Simple XML objects are an advanced topic we won't be covering in this course. So for our purposes, PHP regards as false the case-insensitive keywords false and null, 0 as a number or as a string, an empty string, and an array with no elements. So what else? That's it. Everything else is regarded as being true. Well, there is another value that's regarded as false, and that's an unset variable. However, you shouldn't rely on unset variables in a condition without first testing them because they generate an error. Always use the isSet function to check whether a variable exists, like this. Passing the name of a variable as an argument to isSet returns true if it exists and false if it doesn't. Most of the time, using values as implicitly true or false is straightforward, but watch out for the following values which are always true. -1. Don't be misled by the fact that it sometimes means not found in JavaScript. Also, false and null are regarded as true if you wrap them in quotes. The only strings that are treated as false are an empty string and a numeric representation of 0 in quotes. So that's a quick overview of what PHP regards as true and false. We'll start using truthy and falsy values when making decisions later in the course.